In this lecture, we're going to play around with our level layout just to get something that's a little bit more interesting. You can flex your muscles if you're a bit of a level designer, or you can just do something really basic if you're just here for the programming and don't care so much for the layout. So I will take you through my process now. Let's get started. Let's get things tidied up and prepared a little bit. Over in my hierarchy, I'm going to right click and create empty so I can use this as a grouping game object. I'll call this hazards. And then I'll just reset that by right-clicking on transform and reset, just so it's in the middle, which is nice and organized. Now I will grab my trigger volume, projectiles, spinning thing, dropping object, drag that on top of hazards, and then I can close up hazards. I can click on the little eyeball thing here and it hides it in my scene, so I don't have to look at them. They don't get in the way, but if I'm ready to work on hazards, which I'll do in the next lecture, then I can click on them and get going on hazards. But for now, I'm just looking at environment. I want to think about how large I need to make my area. So to do that, I'm going to click on play. Now that we've got our movement, I can just cruise around and see what I need from my level. The first thing is I can kind of hide the player, which is a bit bad. I need to make sure my walls at the front are lower so I can still see my player, given where the camera's at. Also, this is pretty bad form. I don't want to have any of these big, massive objects at the front here. That's not so good. And if I was to go from down in the bottom left, do some hazards, get around some things, move, up to the top right, that's not too bad. I might make it a little bit longer than that, a little bit bigger, with a little bit of intricacy at the start. So stop and get out of that. Make my window a bit bigger, clear this random error that I don't think's got much to do with what we're up to at the moment. Now I'm going to click on my ground plane and just scale that up to be quite big. It doesn't matter if it's way too big. It's not going to be a resource problem or an efficiency problem. Now I'm going to start the process of just mapping out what are my boundaries? Where do I want the player to be moving in between? What's the actual level aspect of it? And then in the next lecture, I'll do all the hazards. So I want to be thinking about, oh, here's a good spot for this hazard, or oh, this is where things will drop on you, etc. But for now, I'm just going to start the process of mushing things around a little bit just to show you what I'm talking about. So make a wall there. I can duplicate that, move it over to the side, hit E, hold down Control, so I can make a little bit of a slightly different layout. So it's not just purely a square box we're going through. We can start down here and kind of run through a little bit of maze stuff and then head into there and so on. And duplicate this. I'm not so worried about which one's called wall and wall 3 and wall 4. It's just adding that when I duplicate it, playing around with things here. So I'm going to start just doing a little bit of a level layout. And the challenge I've got for you is to build your obstacle course layout as well. Create something that's fun that makes the player go from A to B, and think about where you might put the hazards, but there's no need to add them just yet. We'll do that in the next lecture. And if you want to follow along, do exactly what I'm doing, fantastic. We can do that together. Otherwise, you can just go at your own pace and add things. I'm not going to do a pause the video. Feel free to pause and then restart the video as you choose, but follow along with me and make your course. And please try to make it different to mine. Don't just follow exactly what I'm doing. Put a bit of your own flair in there, because that's what it means to be a game developer. So some of this I'll speed up if I'm just sort of moving some walls around. If I do anything that I think is a talking point moment, then I will talk over that bit and use that. Otherwise, I'll just kind of play around with my walls just to get the general layout of my level the way I want it. Don't be afraid to do some angled walls like that. I think that's totally fine. Doesn't all have to be super symmetrical. Maybe some angled walls this way. Yeah, why not? I'm doing it pretty fast and loose at the moment, and then I'll tidy things up and make sure all the walls touch nicely on one another and there's no gaps in it. But for now, I'm just doing it a little bit quick, duplicating, Control D as I go, putting a new thing down, just scaling it longer as I see fit. Also be thinking about, in a game, you want to be teaching the player how things work. So at the start, maybe it's just you need to navigate through a narrow gap, and it's fairly easy. It's just a narrow gap. And then over here, we'll have something that actually moves or spins. And then up here, I run through something, and that's when I can see off in the distance, probably I'd be looking this way, the projectile's flying at me. So I'm like, oh, things can fly at me when I do that. So have a think about the hazards as you're going there. But I'm going to stop talking for a bit and just do some making. One thing that's really good to do is every now and again, just click play to make sure that things are going as you want them to. Don't do a ton of building and finessing without playing. So the first thing I notice is this is way too easy. It's too far apart. The walls are going to be too high up, but I'll drop them all in a moment. But it's pretty easy. So I might want some things jutting out from these outer walls. So some obstacle type things getting in the way. You know what? I keep accidentally clicking on the ground plane. One thing that we can do is click on the little hand here, and that will allow me to not be able to select the ground itself, which is great. It means I'm not going to accidentally click on it. Just go back and deselect that when you are ready to move the ground, or if you do need to move the ground. I'm going to click on all of my wall pieces and set the height to, actually, what did I do on this first one here? Minus 0.4 for all my walls, so they're all exactly the same height. Minus 0.4. Boop. That should have changed them all so they're at exactly the same height, I think. I might put a little spinny thing at the very start here. So the very first thing you have to do is to get past a spinner. So this is a nice little spot here. Force the player to either go left or to go right, and then I can maybe have a hazard one side and not a hazard the other side. So maybe something that you go through on the left and it triggers a bunch of stuff, so you learn you should go over on the right. It's good to give the player choice and decisions in your game, not to have just only one path. That's a little bit dull. And I might put some of these big obstacles up the back as just sort of, I don't know, buildings in the background, so to speak. Could color them a little bit differently, just to give it a little bit of flavor, so you can't see way off into the distance as well. Just pop these up here. Maybe I'll bring them back in as obstacles, but for now I'm just using the walls as the obstacles. So you can do a little bit of set dressing if you want. We're not trying to make this a work of art. This is not a game we're going to be launching on the App Store or Steam, so put a little bit of flavor to it. Okay, I just had a bit of an issue where I was getting an error. I had to restart Unity. Sometimes you need to do that. Also, I'm thinking my character, I want to sort of see where I'm headed. At the moment, I'm forcing you to go around to the right. And I want you to sort of see forwards where you're going. I think that's going to be a nicer way of revealing the game to the player. If I highlight everything in my environment individually and then try to rotate it, it all rotates individually. However, if I click on the environment game object that everything is within, this grouping game object, then it all rotates together like that, which is kind of neat. That's another reason for us to have a parent game object that these objects are sitting within. I do need to now move my player back into the right spot. But I think that's going to be nicer that I've got this more straight up and down line that I'm seeing as I go through. I could even loop in there, back in, around, bumped into a thing. You know, it's not too bad a maze at the moment. It's serving the purpose. Okay, I'll keep bashing away at this for a little bit longer. I don't want to take a huge amount of time because we're here to learn coding and not necessarily learn level design at this point in time. But let's get a little bit further. Okay, that's a pretty good layout. I don't need to spend a huge amount of time on this. I think this is pretty good. I've got a general layout, a little bit of zigzag at the front there. I bump into the thing and then I'll have an obstacle there. This is more of an open space. I'm not sure what I want to put in here just yet, but I'll put in a bunch of hazards, I think, and then here is the end. So that's a good length for me. I don't want to have a massive level at this stage, just small enough to be interesting. The last thing we can do is a little bit of set dressing. I might leave that until after I do hazards or just not worry about it at all. We're just prototyping here. We're having a little bit of fun working on the gameplay mechanics, but it is kind of nice to have some of these buildings in the background just to give it a slightly different flavor. There we go, a basic zigzaggy kind of layout. We can absolutely change this later. We can absolutely move things around, but we wanted to get a little bit of a stage. Now we can think about our hazards, which we will do in the next lecture. Hope you enjoyed doing some level design. I'll see you in the next one.